What is going on, guys? My name is Dane, and in today's video we're going to be going in depth about my three main publishing methods that I have utilized in order to take my business from around 1K to 10K and even 15K per month, not revenue, profit, publishing books on Amazon KDP and on Audible ACX. We're going to be going in depth about how they contribute to my business model, what they are, how to utilize them in your own business models, and just the major details about each and every single one of them. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's get right into the video. I don't waste more of your time. So what I've done for this video is made a bunch of slides that are gonna better illustrate what I'm talking about and just make all of my points a lot more clear. This is actually taken out of my up and coming publishing program, which is going to be 100% free. If you're interested in joining, it's called Publisher Startup. There's a link in the description down below that you can sign up for, and then it's going to give you notifications for when the program officially goes live. So with that out of the way, let's just get into what my three main publishing methods are. And I just want to say one thing before we get into the lesson for this video. I just want to say a huge thanks to my really good friends, Nicholson Twins. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't know a lot of the knowledge that I am talking about in this video and that you're going to learn about in this video. A lot of the methods I have learned from them and kind of built my own twist on them and put my own kind of feel for them. So a lot of the methods come from them, and then a lot of methods are from things that I've incorporated on top of their methods. But I wanted to mention that because obviously I got to give credit where credit is due. So I just want to say that before we get into the lesson. So if you want to check out their channel, I will link it down below as well. But let's get into the lesson now. Now you can see on my screen here, we're at the start of the slides. You can see the logo of the new course. Anyways, let's dive right into this video. I guess we can call it a lesson because it's literally taken out of the program. This lesson is a part of the program that I'm offering, but I'm giving you guys a taste of what it's like. So let's dive right into this. So the three main methods that contribute to my publishing business, I do like to call them the publishing pillar, Holy Trinity. And I know that's kind of dramatic, but I think it illustrates what it is perfectly, because my publishing business is based off of, my foundation of my publishing business is based off of three main pillars. And those three main pillars are the three methods that I use to publish books. So a solid foundation is what publishing is based off of. And if you choose to half-ass your foundation, eventually everything is going to come tumbling down. And that is the same with any business model. If you have a very weak foundation, then everything is just going to come tumbling down and nothing's going to work in your favor. So building a foundation in publishing that consists of more than one pillar, so like I'm saying, three pillars, is an excellent way to not only diversify your publishing portfolio, so have a bunch of different methods of publishing, but also solidify your odds of reaching success with the business model. So in this video, we're going to be going in depth about each pillar I like to put weight on in my publishing business. So before we do that though, I want to go over just a couple of different investment types. And this is just broad investment types that I'm going to be talking about. But I think they're key to learn about just because I mentioned them throughout the different methods that are in this video. So let's go in depth on those first. So obviously there's aggressive investments and then there's conservative investments, but first let's talk about aggressive investments. So there's more risk when it comes to aggressive investments, as you should know. They have a potential for high reward and they are less reliable. Then on the other hand, we have conservative investments, which have less risk, lower rewards most of the time, and are more consistent and reliable. So now that you know that, that's out of the way, let's get into the publishing pillar, Holy Trinity, like the meaning of this lesson, of this video. So let's dive into it. So the first contributor, so the first pillar to my publishing methods are long-form consistency modeled books. So this leans more towards a conservative investment, and this is the first publishing method that I learned, and also the first method that I put into action into my publishing business. So this is the first thing that I actually learned about and just contributed to my portfolio, if you will. So consistent, and it holds a lot of potential if you put in the required work. So to make these long form consistency model books, they're going to take a lot more work than the other methods that I'm going to talk about in a sec. But if you put in the work and you put in the time and you build a foundation for this foundation, I guess you call it, these are very consistent and hold a lot of potential. They're usually going to contain around 25,000 or more words and a pen name that resembles a real person. And this is very general. You could definitely have a pen name that is like a brand focused name. But from my experience and all of my books that are in the long form consistency model, generally speaking, I use a pen name that represents someone that is a real person. And with these books, since they are longer books, getting around the 25,000 word range, they do take around 3 to 4 weeks to get written, and typically cost me, when I'm hiring writers, through my hiring methods, which are usually consistent of Upwork, which I do talk about in the course. I'm not going to go in depth on it here because that's a whole nother lesson, and it actually is a lesson in the course, how to hire a writer. So that link's below if you're interested in joining that. But anyways, when I hire my ghostwriter, I usually pay around $400 to $900 per long form consistency modeled books. These are more difficult to get positive reviews on, and this will make more sense when I start talking about the other methods. But in my opinion, a long form consistency model based book, basically it targets a demographic of people that are a lot more particular about what they're reading, and it's just an older demographic, so people are a lot more invested in what kind of books they are. Generally speaking, my long form books are like education and reference and self-help and stuff like that. So with those niches, getting good reviews in those niches is a little bit more difficult than the niches that the two methods I'm going to talk about in a sec focus on. But with all that in mind, personally, I think these are a necessity for establishing yourself and your brand as a publisher. Having a long form book, it just screams established brand, in my opinion. So having these kind of books incorporated into your portfolio is very important. So example niches of these kind of long form books would be self-help, business and money, education and teaching, so like I said, and health and fitness, dieting, and travel and adventure, etc. There's a lot more I can talk about, but those are the main ones that I thought about when I was making these slides. So method number 2 is called assisted DIY trending model. So assisted do-it-yourself trending model. So this leans more towards an aggressive investment. Not always, but it'll make more sense when I get to the graphs of these things, why I think these are more of an aggressive investment. They are, however, half the price of a long form consistency model book. They take half the time to make or less, and they are the same, if not double, the opportunity of a long form consistency model book. So I like to call it a trending model though. And this is why you're probably thinking, why wouldn't I just focus on all these assisted DIY books if they're half the price and they are double the opportunity? It's still true, but the reason I call it trending is because a lot of these books that fall under this category tend to do a lot better during holidays, special events, and worldly events. So with the long form consistency model books, they tend to do better, more consistently around the clock. When it comes to these DIY books, not as consistent. So I suggest making these once you have maybe 1 to 2 long form consistency model books under your belt. These should take around 1 to 1.5 weeks to complete by a ghostwriter because they're way less words, and it shouldn't really be longer than that. And they should only cost you, so you can see the difference in cost is quite a bit. When I talked about the long form consistency model books, I said they're around $400 to $900 each. With these short assisted DIY books, 100 to 250 and around 7K to 15K words tops. And one of the best parts, if you're not familiar with ACX, getting your book to 3 hours in length is the main goal, because that's when the price goes up and you get more of a royalty out of a sale on a book that is 3 hours long. So the best part about these DIY books is that with some of them, not all of them, but with some of them, you are able to reach the 3 hour long mark, even though they're only 7K to 15K words. And a general rule of thumb is that every 10K words is about an hour on Audible. So you can see even with 7 to 15K words, these books can get to 3 hours. And I have a bunch of methods that can get these books that long, which again are in a different lesson in the course. But I just want to mention it here so you have that in mind. Some example niches are joke books, workout books, recipe books, language learning books, guided meditation books, trivia books, and game books. Those are all examples. Could venture way out into different niches, but those are the ones I just thought about when I was making these slides. And last but not least is called complete DIY trending model. So model 2 and model 3, so this one, are very, very similar, but they do have a couple distinct differences. So I do separate them into 2 different models. So we do make up all 3 pillars with all 3 of these models. So the complete DIY trending model, let's go in depth on this guy. So you become your own writer with this model. making it very conservative. So the reason it's conservative is because you're not spending any money on writing up front. This is completely free to make one of these books yourself. They almost cost $0. There's a couple costs if you don't want to do a couple things, but generally speaking, you could literally make these $0. And they take a little bit more of your time though, because obviously you're writing it yourself. You're probably not an experienced writer. It's going to take you a little bit more time to make these. And in my opinion, these are perfect for someone who is completely strapped for cash and is looking to kickstart their self-publishing business from scratch. These are still to be thought of as a trending model because the books that you make with this model are very similar to the books that you make with the assisted DIY model. So again, they are both trending. This one is nice though because you make it yourself. It's going to take you a little bit longer, but it's going to cost you a little bit less to do. So you can weigh out the differences. If you want to pay for someone to make it yourself, or want to pay someone to make it in the assisted DIY, definitely go for it. It's made way quicker. It might be made a little bit more professional than you can do it yourself. But if you don't have the kind of money to pay for a book, then this is an excellent method to get started with. And these are perfect to make while your long form book is being written. So if you have the money to make the long form consistency model book and get started with that, like I said, it's gonna take 3 to 4 weeks to get those written. So during that 3 to 4 weeks, these are the perfect books to like incorporate into your portfolio and start making while the other book is being written. And again, these should take around 1 to 2 weeks to complete, no longer than that. So I mean, it's very close to the DIY assisted model books in time length, but this is really dependent on how much discipline you have and how much you can put into, how much focus you can put into writing it yourself. Because again, it's based on yourself and how much you can write. And these should only cost you around $10 to $20 for covers. So if you don't want to make the cover yourself, I mean, you can, that'll be $0. You can use like Canva or something. But if you want to pay someone via Fiverr to make the cover, then these books will probably cost you around $10 to $20 in total. Because again, you're not paying for the writing. And these are around 5K to 10K words long. So a little bit shorter than the assisted DIY ones because you're making them yourself. And again, same niches as the assisted DIY. So I went ahead and made a visual here, as you can see on the screen, and I'll link a download below this video so you can download this if you want it saved. You can look at it more often. But you can see we got the 3 publishing pillars there, and you got long form on the left, assisted DIY in the middle, and complete DIY on the right. And you can see above them, I have all of the listed points that we just covered. So I'm not going to go over all those again, but those are all the points that I just went over. If you want a direct visual with everything in one place, then this is the perfect diagram for you. So I'll leave that as a download in the description down below, and you can check that out after the video. So with all this in mind, we have one trending model. So the DIY trend assisted and the DIY complete. And then we have one steady model. So the long form consistency model books. So diversifying your publishing portfolio by splitting it up into aggressive and conservative sections is very simple. The long form consistency method continually brings in consistent revenue on a month-to-month basis. So the long form books, they'll bring you consistent revenue on a month-to-month basis. And then by incorporating the DIY style methods, you are leveraging the power of events like Christmas, Easter, Valentine's, summer vacation, spring break, and even world crisis like the current pandemic. So this is why the DIY methods tend to trend, because they do well during those peak seasons. Obviously, Christmas, any book's going to do well. Easter books are going to do pretty good. Summer vacation, kids are out of school, and if you recall, the niches I talked about kind of pertain to kids. So during summer vacation, parents are going to want something for their kids to do. They'll be buying these like DIY style books, and they're going to start trending during those times as well. So DIY books do well during these times because the demographic, like I just said, and the market for the books is associated closely with these events that I just talked about. So Christmas, Easter, Valentine's, etc. For example, with kids being out of school early this year because of the pandemic, I had a few children's books I have a few children's books in the children's book niche that teach math and education topics. And these started to do very well because parents were suddenly forced to homeschool their kids. Makes sense, right? Because these DIY trending model books, I made a bunch of them using the assisted model, so number 2, in the children's math and education niche, like a few months ago, before the virus thing was even like talked about. I didn't even know it was gonna happen. Obviously, no one knew it was gonna happen, but I had these all just ready to go, and then they just all of a sudden took off in like April because kids were out of school. Parents needed something to do with their kids because they needed to teach them things while they weren't in school, and they just started doing very well. So one of these books took a week for me to make and only cost me around 150 all in. So this is an example of one of those books I made, those DIY training model books. Took me a week to make, only cost around 150 bucks. So check out the numbers that it brought in that during that time when they started to take off. So you can see on the screen here, this is a screenshot from my Amazon ads backend, and this is one of my books. And I spent $2,095 from March 1st to April 30th. You can see bottom right there. And the book brought in $7,733 in sales. So that's sales. It's not royalties. I think if I go to my royalties on this book, it's around usually 40% of the sales. I'm not going to do the math in my head. It still made quite a bit of money. So I just did the math on my phone because I didn't want to do it in my head. And I think it's around like $3,300 profit. I mean, I could just go look at my royalties, I guess, but that's like $1,200 profit, and I only spent $150 on it. So over that time span, it made me quite a bit of money, and that's only one book. I had a few of these books, so just to give you a perspective, if I had like 5 of these books, that's $5,000 in profit in 2 months off of these DIY books that I only would have spent like $700 on total. So very good. When they start trending during those peak times, they can do very well. So that's a lot of money back from spending $150 plus the ad cost, of course, which I just covered. Compare that to a long form books numbers, and you can begin to see the consistency factor compared to the DIY books. So if I go back to the DIY graph quickly, you can see how it peaks in the middle there and then kind of goes down again after April. It's because April was obviously the major hotspot for when kids were out of school, and March and April. So it did good during that time, but then it went back down. You can see how it peaked and it trended. So that was the DIY book. In comparison to a long form consistent book from April 24th to May 17th, you can see in the bottom right there, this is just one of those long form books that I have. And this book did $3,700 in sales, and I only spent $900 on it. But you can see how much more flat the line is compared to the other one, which peaked. So just comparing the two, showing you what they're like. So I made this graph here. It's not the best graph, but it kind of illustrates what I'm saying. You can see in the gold line there is a long form book. On the left, you can see those are orders going up, and then we have the months on the bottom there. And like I said, the gold one is a long form book, and the gray one is a DIY book. And you can see during December, they both peak because obviously December is this is just a mock-up. This isn't like my actual books, but this is just an idea. You can see during December, they both peak, but the DIY one peaks a lot more. And this is actually shown in the results for my books back in December. If I were to show you an actual graph of my books, it's just it's more confusing this. I want to make it a lot more clear, so I just put it on this like just 2 books against each other. But you can see the consistency model book stays a lot more consistent, a lot more flatline, and the DIY book goes up and down. So you can see the consistent one goes across, and the DIY one kind of like swiggles almost. And having the two paired like that, I think just really builds a solid foundation, because you can see if I only had one of them going, then I'd only be making a certain amount of money. If I had both of them going, then it paired together, it makes a very solid built publishing pillar, I guess, foundation. So that's why I like having both models incorporated into my portfolio. So building an unbreakable foundation. The best part about contributing to your portfolio with DIY books is that you can really cut costs and still make just as much money with these as you can with long form books. When you combine all 3 methods, you truly have the holy trinity established with your publishing foundation. And I hope you can really begin to see why including the trending model books with the consistency model books paired together makes a very solid foundation. You're not only leveraging a consistent flow of cash from long form books, but you're taking full advantage of trends and spikes in the market with your DIY books. And this doesn't go to say that with long form books, they're not going to spike, because they are. But from my experience, the DIY books tend to spike a lot more consistently. Consistency is not the right word. A lot more than the long form books do. So generally speaking, the consistency long form books are going to stay a lot more flat throughout the year, and then the DIY books are going to peak a lot more. For me, this has been the best strategy I've implemented into my publishing business to date, and that is without a lie, that is 100% certainty. This is the best method I've implemented into my business. For example, if I only ever stuck to long form books, my portfolio would be like my amount that I've earned would literally be only 1/3 of the size that it is right now in terms of revenue. If I only ever stuck to long form books, I would only have made 1/3 of the amount of money that I've made so far with my publishing business. So you can see how much these DIY books have contributed to my income with publishing. So how to pick the best method to start with. So this all depends on your current situation. Personally, I started with the long form consistency model. While my writer was writing my first long form book, I used that time to complete some DIY books. If you have like $1,000 to $1,500 to invest in books, I suggest you do the same thing that I did. Having that initial investment in the long form books is going to pay off in the long form, but incorporating DIY ones while they're being written is just an excellent way to get your publishing business really skyrocket and start off on the right foot. If you don't have that much money though, get started with DIY books, grow your business, and begin investing into long form consistency model books and diversify your portfolio eventually. But if you're just a beginner, totally fine. Just begin with the DIY books. You don't have much money, and start building your portfolio. And once you start earning from those DIY books, reinvest that into some long form books and really establish that foundation that we've been talking about the entire lesson. So the last thing here is getting creative. I've also implemented both these methods into one book before. So both the long form DIY method, the long form consistency method, and a DIY method into one book before. So you can do that obviously as well. And I have one book that is around 20,000 words in length, and it was ghostwritten, and it contains some kinds of principles that you'll find from a long form book, but it also includes different sections where the DIY method comes into play. And I know that you probably don't know what a DIY section looks like, and I talk a lot more about it in my course. This video is getting like way too long already. I can see on the screen it's like 20 minutes. But I'm just giving you an idea. You can mix the two and make very solid books too. And obviously with a shorter 20K word book, it's going to cost you a lot less, but it also has the principles that a long form consistency model book has, but then you're incorporating the DIY method and you're literally getting the best of both worlds with one book. So that's something that's cool. It's definitely something that I highly recommend trying once you get an idea of how these things work. But you're gonna have to look at the course and get notified when that goes live in order to learn what I'm really talking about here. Anyways, if you are interested and you enjoyed this video lesson, I guess, I want to give you a taste of what the Publisher Startup Program is like. This is one of my favorite lessons from the program because it really talks about the three main methods that I have incorporated into my publishing business and what's really making me that consistent income every single month is by combining these two methods and putting them into one big portfolio. And that's just done really well for me. So in the Publisher Startup Program, I go a lot more in depth about how to incorporate all these things, how to make these kinds of books. I provide book outlines for both long form books and DIY style books. So you can literally just plug and play your niche into those book outlines and then give those to a ghostwriter and get them written. But yeah, if you are interested in joining the program and you want to learn more about that, click the link below. You'll get notified when the program goes live, which I think is going to be around June 15th. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that's the goal right now. I have all the lessons recorded. I just got to edit them and get them uploaded to Teachable, but that's for the future. If you enjoyed this video today, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post videos on YouTube. I post all about these publishing videos, entrepreneurship, and just lifestyle stuff. So if that interests you, make sure you subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. See you later.